Today, let's talk Tesla stock. With the third quarter earnings coming up this Wednesday, further interest rates cuts expected, and the election, there's a lot of variables still to come. Did Tesla do enough at the We Robot event to change investors' minds? What will they need to do at the earnings call to give further guidance? And might there be a surprise before the year ends or in the first quarter? We get to talk with Yashu Sharma today. He has a YouTube channel called HitThatBid and is an expert in analyzing Tesla fundamentals with his own long-term modeling, in addition to his stock options momentum trading analysis. Thank you so much, Yashu. I've been looking forward to catching up with you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Herbert. Always a good time.
One of the things that you do in your channel quite often is you do follow the stock, both short-term, midterm, momentum, and also long-term. So that you've got this kind of like the trifecta. And so I wanted to specifically chat with you about the stock, get your thoughts on where it has been. You know, people thought that this event was going to be the big one, and now they're saying, hey, it's too far away, the kind of things they talked about. What's your quick analysis of the event itself, and what was the expectations and where it's headed now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we can dive into the event maybe in a bit here, but in terms of stock, I think one thing to look at is the options market. And if you don't follow the options market, you probably think it's some degenerate gambling going on, and that's pretty much it. But the options market really gives us a second derivative look into the fundamental implied volatility. And that's fancy words for essentially us talking about what's being priced into Tesla and what's not being priced in, and is there a big event potentially happening? And so looking at the options market before the event, there was a large premium baked into out-of-the-money calls and puts for Tesla, specifically calls. For example, I had the 300 strike call for January. I still have it. And the amount of deflation that we've seen in that specific strike even post 1010 event is massive. And what's crazy about that is that we still have earnings happening next week, right? So historically, you would get this premium baked into people wanting to buy calls and wanting to buy out of the money, let's say calls or puts for a stock. And yet when the robotaxi event happened and it's over, you would expect for there to still be a lot of premium into the options itself. And yet with earnings next week, it's a massively deflationary time for implied volatility for Tesla, meaning the market is not baking in a huge move for Tesla earnings next week, or nearly as much as it did before. So what that tells me, I think, is that the robotaxi event was the cream of the crop event for investors to bet on. And now that earnings is coming up, investors are kind of taking a back seat to it more or less and kind of considering it more status quo in terms of what might happen in terms of Tesla stock, that is.
Okay. Love that you explained that. So I'm a long-term investor. I'm a buy and hold. One thing I've been learning, though, talking to people like you, is even though I'm a buy and hold long-term investor, that understanding, because Tesla is one of the most volatile stocks, it's important to actually still kind of understand, because it will fall, it will rise. And so you're saying that a lot of people are betting on this 1010 and they're kind of holding, or do you think that there's going to be a sell-off after the earnings call?
Well, if you look at the options market, and actually I was pulling up some stats before this about what has happened in the last I pulled up the last 15 Tesla earnings calls. And what's crazy, I think, is that actually Tesla moves quite a bit now, way more than it did prior to. In the last year and a half, in the week after, we've seen moves like minus 12%, plus 12%, minus 12%, minus 10%. So Tesla used to kind of be a nothing burger post earnings. And it still might be the day after, but like that week following, we're seeing a bigger and bigger move sometimes on Tesla stock earnings. And so there's this kind of this divergence of the options market saying, well, there's not much baked into this right now, and it's not going to be that big of a move. And then if you look at historical trends, Tesla in the last year-ish, let's call it, has moved double-digit percentages after earnings. So in terms of being a buy and hold, obviously, it's like watching game by game for your favorite team. It's not necessarily the end of the world if they lose a few or whatever, if you still think the team has a great roster. But I personally quite like looking at the shorter term, medium term trends, because it tells us what the market is excited about. And again, I think the big exciting factor for the market was robotaxi event. But I also think a U.S. election specifically really tamed the amount of buying that I think that might have happened prior to the event for Tesla, because with Elon, of course, attaching himself to Team Trump, there is some geopolitical risk there. And of course, why buy if you're big money? Why buy a stock like Tesla if you don't really love it that much, but you're thinking about it? Why not just wait till after elections and find out what happens with that at that point? So there's this kind of gamesmanship that's going on, I think, in the short to medium term.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. So just to set the stage, both you and I are Canadians. I'm also an American at this point, but you're Canadian. So maybe you're a bit more objective about this. But explain what might happen to Tesla specifically, depending on a Trump or a Kamala win.
Yeah, I mean, without getting into specifics, right? And I don't really have a horse in the race, as you call it. There's a couple of tangible, I think, more or less facts. One is that Trump is trending higher than Kamala right now. Mm-hmm. That might change. There's still about 2.5, 3 weeks left here as we talk, so who knows? And the second fact is that Elon is Team Trump. We know that you don't have. I mean, you could be in a cave at this point and still know that Elon is Team Trump. So, in terms of the stock itself, it's hard to say what policies might affect it or be more objective. But the market, I think, just generally has to look at it and go, well, if Elon is Team Trump and he says, well, if Kamala gets elected, I'm going to jail. How long is my jail sentence? And he's obviously joking about that, hopefully, tongue in cheek. And he's saying that, obviously he has a horse in the race. And so if you're big money just does not like uncertainty. And we know with the mega cap stocks like Tesla, like big money is what moves markets at the end of the day. And so if you're a potential hedge fund out there that's looking to buy Tesla, or a pension fund even for a longer term investment, I mean, if you're attaching yourself to Trump, you have 3 weeks here left till the election. It's not going to be, we know with Trump, Elon will have a conservative focus within the actual maybe policy. We talked about, Elon's talked about him wanting to come and basically cut all government spending and do what he's done at X, basically at the governmental level. Now, as a Tesla investor, you might be thinking, well, that sounds like there's going to be a lot of Elon's time and resources now going into this. What does that mean for Tesla? And so you can make a counter argument there. But I think just generally speaking on a wider scale, we know that Team Trump is probably what Elon prefers.
Okay. So, yeah, I do believe it. Like you said, November, the election is kind of this thing where people are just going to wait till that. Even whatever happens in next week, October 23rd, which is the election, the earnings call, are you expecting the earnings to be good, bad?
Well, the general consensus, I haven't done a deep dive into this quarter's earnings yet, but the general consensus seems to be that it might be a tough quarter for Tesla to have a home run quarter in terms of EPS, at least. Now, the good of that is that if the whole world already thinks that, you would hope some of that is priced into it. Tesla has not been, lowering your price. They've been doing their financing promo. They're doing a few certain things, but really, Tesla's story has essentially turned from, and maybe it's sad, maybe it's exciting, depending on who you are, but it's turned from EPS growth in the short to medium term to, there might be a huge opportunity of EPS leaps happening in the next few years. And so that leaves a chasm between now and the next few years before Robotaxi gets unveiled, or not unveiled, but launched, where you kind of go, well, how do you model Tesla, right? Do you model it based on EPS? And if you do, then there's obviously flatlining of what's going on. And if you don't model it, then how are you being intellectually honest about modeling a company like Tesla? And so there's a lot of unknowns with Tesla right now. I think the biggest opportunity, though, is that if you believe in the Robotaxi, and I drive FSD, I think you drive FSD pretty much every day, and we think that they're going to solve this thing and they're going to plug it into the Cybercab. Well, that's when the unit economics really get a little bit nutty, because now there's no steering wheel, there's no pedal. They're selling these at more of the fleet level. These cars are running around 24/7. They're wirelessly charging, as we saw today, just driving up to the pad. That's when the economics start to get better. The problem is, Elon time is Elon time. So, if he says 2026, but for sure 2027, the market doesn't take that at face value. And perhaps that is the opportunity for us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he actually said 2026. I wish he did not say definitely before 2027, because now that number was put into people's minds. Okay, so I've been speaking to a number of technical analysts, people like Mark Newton of Fundstrat, and also people like Justin of Lord Pretty Flacco on X. And both of them are saying that after the election, that the stock was going to go up and down, very, totally volatile until after the election, just like you did. And then they're saying that by the end of this year, and actually the first quarter of next year, they think that if the stock hits 265, it's off and running to all-time highs. Are you optimistic about what might happen in the first quarter of next year?
I mean, it's hard not to be optimistic about with interest rates coming down. That's number one. Consumers are still pretty strong. The Fed I think the Fed will continue to lower interest rates considering inflation is pretty much cool at this point. We know car sales are very sensitive to interest rates, and Tesla's bought them down. So Tesla's eating the cost of those promotions right now. So when the interest rates come down, Tesla will eat less of that cost, and that'll go straight into margin. And so, of course, it's hard not to be bullish on that because that's what's caused the Tesla decline in car sales for a while. The other added risk here, aside from technicals, is that if Trump and Elon do win, what policies are we going to see Trump potentially renege on? One of them being the zero emissions vehicle credits that he knows that he wants to kind of essentially crater. And of course, the counter argument here on the Tesla bull side is, well, Tesla doesn't need those credits. The other EV manufacturers do need those credits. But at the same time, those zero emission vehicle credits fall essentially to the bottom line for Tesla. Those are very, very beneficial for Tesla's profits. So Trump wants to put in tariffs. We know that he talks about banning essentially Chinese EVs and banning the software. And so it's a big fat question mark, assuming Trump wins. So can Elon convince Trump to put in some beneficial legislation to actually help expand other EV companies out there potentially? But the uncertainty that exists, even let's say even if Trump does get elected here, the uncertainty that does exist is still quite substantial. So that's not to say everything's going to be ugly, because if you look at October in general, Octobers are pretty volatile for Tesla. I'll read out the last few years worth of October trading for Tesla as Perplexity. Minus 8% last year, minus 10% year before, plus 10% the year before, plus 7% the year before that. That's 2020. So general, Octobers are pretty volatile for Tesla. I think we both remember the all-time high run that Tesla had in October 2021 when the Hertz news came out with the with that Tom Brady commercial, and Tesla seemingly out of nowhere. So Tesla is kind of like a haystack. All it needs sometimes is one little match to light it up, and we see premiums go back up. Potentially that is the Trump election and Trump winning. Who knows?
Do you think that we're there? Like, so let me explain that a little bit. So we've got all these things building up, right? But it means nothing because it doesn't go to the bottom line. And by the way, even if the credits go away, that even though it's good for the margins for Tesla, analysts just kind of like wave it off anyways. They don't consider it to be part of the auto gross margins. So all these things are building up. If something does happen, do you think it will go up stock like big time, or do you think that people will just say doesn't matter? There's going to be no earnings going to be impacted until robotaxi or something like that, and until slowly it'll grow over next year or two. For example, let's say if there was a partnership announced in the fourth quarter of this year, is that enough to make the stock jump? Or again, it's all about earnings and it doesn't matter if there's a partnership, nothing's going to change.
I mean, it's an interesting point. My take on this would be that as soon as something hits the revenue line for Tesla, like if a partnership were to come in XYZ company, Stellantis, for example, I know you guys were chatting about that. If they were to have a partnership where there would be some sort of tangible revenue that starts to hit Tesla's books, even if it's not as big as we all want it to be right away, as soon as I think the revenue starts to hit from a partnership or a licensing or a software addition, at more of a material, like for example, FSD right now is a subscription, but they don't really parse that number out for us. So it's not like we can project it. But let's say if they did a Stellantis partnership where now all of a sudden Wall Street analysts would have to go back to their drawing books and go, well, there's this many manufacturers out there, there's this many cars in the fleet, this many might be eligible, let's run the math all based on sensitivity. I think that's when you see a turning for Tesla, specifically on that part. I don't think Tesla announcing anything is good enough. I think it's the revenue recognition of it that starts to, because we saw this with, for example, NVIDIA. They said the AI revolution is happening, it's happening, it's happening. No one believed them. And then one monster quarter, they came out and they said, here is our expanded revenue and expanded profit based on what we said. Mm-hmm. And matter of fact, we're actually doubling our projection for what we're going to we're actually going to hit on revenue and profits within the next year. And that's when NVIDIA had that huge popping up 20% after hours, and everyone's been FOMOing since. So I think it's the tangibleness, especially for Tesla, where people don't take Elon seriously at his word, often to their detriment, that I think this would have to turn into some sort of a revenue on paper for Tesla.
Okay. Well, I buy that. Thank you for explaining that. The other thing is, people call Tesla a car company because the vast majority of earnings and its revenue comes from cars. And so you rightly said, if its interest falls down, it's cut, then that's going to improve. And even just that alone should be, slowly, people are going to start valuing that a little bit more, because we might actually end up going back to the 50% growth, because that's what the guidance was. Not exactly guidance, but they kind of made a statement there on the earnings call. Okay, so let's consider Tesla as an auto company, but aren't we expecting maybe a new vehicle announcement? It could be several, right? There could be a Model Y refresh. We kind of know that that's going to come. Mm-hmm. First month of January, or let's call it the first quarter of the first quarter next year. We know that there's going to be more affordable models based on existing production lines. Could be like a modified Model 3, Model Y, but something different. But it can come off the production line. They've talked about this. Yeah. Elon said could actually maybe even before the end of this year, but okay, first quarter, second quarter of next year. And then there could still be out of the blue some sort of a more affordable car, like the $25,000 car. Some people are saying, well, we'll have this debate, but some people are saying that you can just take the existing, robotaxi car, Cybercab, and add the wheels. Right. My point is, that car is not being developed until 2026, and so why are you thinking that's going to be the one? But anyways, we'll talk about that. You know what I mean? There's like 4 different potentials of new vehicles announced. Yeah. What could happen if they do announce these things? Do you have to wait till announcement, or again, like you're saying, it has to be like the day that you actually start buying it and people pressing order?
Well, on the cars, I think the Model Y Juniper, if that's what we're calling it, I don't think that has a big effect on the stock. Nothing. Because of course I personally don't think so. I don't think it unlocks a new segment of the market. The problem Wall Street has today is they look at the car market, they hash it out based on income and cost of the car, and they go, well, the majority of the car market is on the bottom end of that market. It's not at the top end. And of course, profits are good up here, but really scale is what you need down here. So, but what you say about the $25,000 model, and we know Tesla in the last few earnings calls has put in notes and said, we still expect, we're on track for first half 2025. Everyone, that I listen to is pretty much thinking at this point, okay, they're probably going to, and this might sound crazy, but they're probably going to gear this new car lineup. I'm not sure if it's going to be the compact plus steering wheels, whatever. Maybe it's a new smaller Model 3, who knows, hatchback style. I don't know. Right. But they're going to do more of an Apple-esque launch, right? Where they're ready to go with it. They talk about it, they take orders, and they deliver within, let's say, the same quarter, the next 3 months after. And that's what would shock the market. Tesla has never done that. Because, for example, people that hate Tesla like to talk about the Roadster.
Tesla's never done that? They've always done a product reveal, Cybertruck, Roadster, Model 3, and then years later before it's okay. So now, of course, the reason why this is important is not because they just deliver it within the first 3 months. It's because it's actually, let's say in theory, if this theory is correct in Tesla, and we stick with Tesla at their word, and that's why I think next week's earnings call will be really important to make sure that they haven't remove that line about guidance about the first half of 2025. Right. But let's say that stays. That market, that market, the segment of that market that it targets for the cheaper model, now with lower interest rates can go
berserk. As much as I like to talk about Teslas, I recognize that there's a large portion of people that aren't going to be able to buy a $55,000 car.
Right.
And they're going to buy their Toyota Camry or Toyota Corolla, and those are great cars too, right? If you're looking for a entry level car. Now, of course, we can talk about, well, with EV tax credits and all this stuff, you can get it down for sure. But I think Tesla can do a better job advertising that. That's a different debate. But that $25,000, $30,000 car, that entry level car, that resets the valuation on Tesla on the car side of the business, I think.
Okay, we are all getting very confused as far as I'm concerned. Okay, there's a Model Y that's going to get refreshed. There's a Model 3. It's already been refreshed. Okay, there's a version of Model 3 in Mexico that they reduced the price by $3,000 US dollars by just putting cloth in it. All right, now they're going to launch multiple vehicles that's based on the same line. And so what you called it, let's say it's a Model 3 with a hatchback, right?
Right.
Just a different back. You could, that is a totally different segment, but it could be, it's not the $25,000 car. It could be close to that already, but not the $25,000 car. You can even have another one that's even the compact version, the true low cost version. I'm just saying that you can already have these new vehicles released that is already going to be lower than Model 3. In some cases, Model 3 is already under $35,000.
Right.
So how much further do you need to go?
Yes.
To hit that mythical 25,000, right? It's like, and that one, by the way, I was going to say that because it's based on the same production line, I was having this debate with Brian White, people who understand the factories, they could be hiding this. It could already be a production line that they're getting ready to roll this out, like you said, within 3 months.
Yeah.
It's not like this whole new line that they have to create.
Yeah, and it does sound a little bit like copium because it's like, well, okay, Tesla's going to come out of nowhere and fly by night and all of a sudden throw this new car. But we know, remember, this is what Elon said. He said originally when the Berlin factory was still under construction, he said that our plan is that we're going to have cars and models specific to the regions that we build them in. And to me, that meant, well, you're not going to have the Cybertruck as big as it is driving through the small roads in Europe, let's say, for example. You might have a different version of that. But to me, that, again, was China. The Chinese model, and Tom Zhu has said this. There's an interview that I retweeted on X, where he talks in Chinese. It's translated, but he says, as Chinese people, we're really proud of what we make, and so we want to make a Chinese specific model that speaks to us and what's important to us and is true to our culture and what we believe in and our engineering prowess here. And he talks about that model, and he said it's coming. And mind you, this was like 2.5 years ago at this point, right? So it's been a while. But in my head, I've never forgotten that Elon has said, we're going to build cars that are specific to the regions. And so if the plan isn't to have, right now they have the S, the 3, the X, and the Y, and they're kind of universal more or less, with the Cybertruck being more North American specific. I think we're going to start to see a decentralization of the models based on regions very soon. I don't know if that means Mexico. I'm not entirely sure if that means China or Europe, but I think we're going to start to see that moving forward pretty soon.
Okay. So you said if there's a partnership, but it has to show some sort of revenue, let's say FSD, you do agree it's a car announcements, but the car announcements have to be like buy within 3 months, 6 months, something very short. People then jump on that right away, because especially if it's a new segment that they've not been in. Anytime there's a new segment. By the way, when I did a search, I will get back into this, but I used to create these milestone charts, track every single milestone. And I overlaid the milestones with the stock movement and tried to find which milestones make any difference. And just to prove that, Elon commenting and tweets don't move the stock, it might do it for 24 hours, but nothing sustained. Yeah. The things that are really sustained, that are progressively going up in a hockey stick, it's earnings. It's basically after an earnings call, if the earnings look good, and it's because it's driven by a brand new vehicle or product, and then boom, stock follows, right? That's pretty obvious, but those are the ones that move it. So other than partnerships, other than new car announcements, what else could we be looking forward to in the next 6 months?
Well, I reach and okay, maybe not 6 months, but what I'm also excited about is the Tesla bot. And of course, there's a whole debate about them being teleoperated and whatnot. Putting that aside, Mark Benioff, actually the CEO of
Right.
Salesforce, he retweeted the Tesla bots. And Salesforce, by the way, if you don't know, is a huge
Yeah.
company. They're a CRM company that essentially run massive organizations and all the logistics, backends, sales, management, marketing, all of that for mega companies all around the world, multi-billion-dollar company listed on the stock market. Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce, retweeted the Tesla bot, and he said, "Look, like imagine a salesperson dressed as a bot walking up to you and talking business essentially, and saying like decking these out for Salesforce." And I retweeted and I said, "Why isn't this like the front page of all tech news right now?" Because the bots, and here Herbert's actually pulling it up here. Um, you know, at the end of the day, these bots are programmable. You can train them based on training data, and what you train them on is what they're going to do. Putting the teleoperation aside, the fact that they can still move their hands with a certain degree of freedom, they can still be nimble enough but not fall down all the time. Those are major milestones and acceleration of the bot that we've seen in the last 3 years, from a guy dancing on stage to where they are today, is nothing short of incredible. So the bot is another thing where, Teslas are essentially robots on wheels, but the bot, you would imagine, would actually be easier to solve in terms of the software aspect, because it's just based on training data of what you put it. It's not driving around people or trying to interact with people on the road. It's just more or less working, whether it's a sales factory or pardon me, a sales conference or a factory, whatever it might be. So these bots are super exciting as well to me.
Yeah. So they dropped this yesterday, right? The brand new Tesla bot demo. And what they shocked everybody with is everything you're seeing here is all autonomous. It can map and walk around autonomously. It can walk upstairs autonomously. It can charge itself autonomously. It can carry heavy loads. This one's 26 pounds, 11 kilograms. It can do that now. It can walk upstairs. And even though it doesn't have the autonomous label, AI team confirmed it was. And it can do this autonomously. So you can actually interact with it physically. It recognizes you, just like FSD could kind of see pedestrian intent. He's pointing at that. It can grab different things like the bottle and the bags of chips and hand it to you. So the interesting thing was, the biggest concern everybody had with the event was, it was teleoperated. But they come back the next day and they go, boom, it could have been teleoperated. So the progress is huge. Now, you pointed out this, which is Mark Benioff. He's the CEO of Salesforce, a very large corporation company, and he's saying robot force. He's kind of positioning himself, to Elon, please. Imagine a future where the bots basically powered with every customer touch point. He wants to use the software agent force, right? Built on the Salesforce AI trust layer. And so from ticket counters, healthcare, retail stores, he wants to be that can, help train these bots for whatever, let's say if you're a hotel and who needs to tell the hotel, the bot, the hotel info and how to act and behave, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So he wants it, but it's too early. He's just saying that now. So because Elon did say the bots aren't, so it's progressed a lot faster than everybody realized, because it's doing all these things autonomously. But he did say that it's going to be 1,000, 2,000 internal, and not till the following year that they could possibly send it to partners. But are you saying there's a potential, do you think, that maybe next year there's been announcements of partnerships?
Man, I think the bot actually people would jump to before auto, because
Agreed. Yep.
The bots, there's no baggage there, right? If you're a legacy auto company, you hate Elon, you hate electric, you don't want to switch, blah, 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 political gas interest. With the bot, you're just a tech company. You have maybe millions of customers like Salesforce does already. And you're thinking, well, if I get a fleet of, if you get 10 or 20 of these, like what the amount of leverage that I can have in my company is massive. So I actually do think there's a chance, potentially a material chance, that we hear about this prior to any partnerships with FSD, for sure.
I've been saying this, by the way. I've been saying this. I'm much more of a bot guy than FSD guy. And we did hear that there was somebody, I don't know, did not validate this, 150 CEOs of manufacturing firms or executives at manufacturing firms were at the event. and they think that it was for the bots. But again, too early to know if that is interesting. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Yash. It's always so much fun to talk to you. You really do come with some, every single question I've had, you've taught me something I wasn't thinking about, both short term, midterm, and long term. So follow Yashu on his. He's got a YouTube channel called HitThatBid. And do you still do the closing of the stock if people are interested in the trading of the day? Is that, you still do that, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, come by, follow me. It's been a little bit more scarce these days with the live streams during market hours, but one day they will be back. So I'll have a better regular schedule at that point.
Bring them back. They're very popular. Like you basically do a live stream right at the end of the closing, and then you talk about that day. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Yashu. Appreciate you.
Right on. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.